What's your full name?
Stephen Alexander Eisner.
In Prague, your name wasn't Stephen, right?
Stepan. Over the P, there's a little V on top, which makes it that sound. In Prague, we had a house in the country, in a place, Klonovitz. Klonovitz is about a half-hour drive from Prague. We would go there on weekends. My parents had built a home there. Very nice building. It was a comfortable house, 2 stories. It was a major house in the country. I know the German army took it over and we just left it. My earliest memories are from Klonovitz. Going out into the garden, actually it was more of a woods than a garden. They'd search for me, bring me back and said, "Where were you? What were you doing?" And I told him I was in the woods with the gypsies. I didn't see any gypsies, but I made that up.
What was the city of Prague like? What was your apartment like?
It was an apartment house. It wasn't a building. Very comfortable, very big. I remember best the dining room table, because we'd go there, and there were pictures of the relatives, grandfathers on the wall. Tommy and I had a nurse that slept in the big bedroom that we had an alcove. That was her sleeping place. She was a blonde Slovakian, and I would wake up before she got up and stay in bed and watch her get dressed. I forget how old I was. I was 3 or 4 years old, something like that. That's the fondest memory that I have of Prague. Prague was really bilingual, Czech and German. And but with the Slečna, we just spoke Czech.
Slečna?
Slečna.
What's that?
Servant.
You're the Fräulein?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your mother. Early memories.
A very gentle person. She was in the store with my father, but the store was within walking distance. Whenever we came home from school, she was there. She was always with us. She spoke German. She was Austrian. So basically that's why we were bilingual, Tommy and I. German, Czech, later on also Latin. She was also a very active person. Skied with us, played tennis. We went to Switzerland, St. Moritz. That's where I broke my leg. Mom and Dad were skiing, and Tommy and I went sledding. And I wanted to get on the front of the sled. And when we were going downhill, we went over a bump, and I fell forward, and he couldn't turn the sled around. The sled ran over me and broke the leg.
But how old were you when you had the accident?
About 4. Too young to ski, and that's why I was sledding. And my father and mother immediately came over, and I went to the hospital. My grandmother came immediately. Within a day, she was in the hospital with a suitcase of my toys with her. I guess the way they set a leg that was broken in those days was you put them up in there on a pulley. I don't know what it did at night, but all the pictures of me in the hospital with the leg up in the air like that. It was the left leg. Ever since then, my left leg is longer than my right leg. About an inch difference now. I was in the hospital a couple of weeks, I guess for 2 weeks or something like that. Then we came back to Prague.
Tell me about your dad.
He was very gregarious.
What was his name?
Robert Benjamin Eisner. He was very generous and humorous, a lot of friends. He was very attentive to us. His brothers were officers in the Czech army, in the cavalry. That's why I started riding, and he was a good horseback rider. He was the one who started us on skiing. He also played tennis. He built a very successful store, women's wear. There was a big sign outside, Štihla matka tlusta dcera proti šaty u Eisnera. A slender mother, stout daughter, by their clothing at Eisner's. Prague itself, at that time, was not very large. The store was in the area around what here would be called Times Square. The Czech army went through the Times Square. They had a cavalry that showed off. It took them 2 hours to go through, and we watched from the store. They never fired a shot. They surrendered. Then 2 weeks later, we were up there again to watch the German army coming in. And they came through in the other direction. It took them all day. Tanks rolling through there and so on. When we left Prague, the store stayed behind, and we never got anything back from it. He spoke Czech, German, English. He had been in England before on his own, working there in some kind of a garment industry. So he spoke English. And when we left Czechoslovakia, he was already in England because he had been drafted back into the army, and then the army just folded. The ones who got advance notice were the Jewish officers. And so when we left in '39, that's where we went. I was 7 years old, but we applied for a visa to get out. And my uncle was a counselor to the financial minister. And he had the connections to get us visas. My mother packed us up, and we went on a train, and the Gestapo came through the train. Everybody had to show them their visa. My mother is a Christian, and so her visa was Christian, but we were not on that visa. We would have been on there as Jewish children. We were in the dining car, and one of the waiters came and talked to my mother and so on, and the waiter took Tommy and I into the kitchen car. They took us into a pantry where we would peel potatoes. You know, they kept us busy. A couple of the cooks kept us company. When the Gestapo came in, the dining car was uncoupled from the kitchen car, and the kitchen car was dragged over to some other part of the railroad stop. So they were totally separated, and my mother didn't know that. She would not have bribed us into the kitchen if she knew that the car would be uncoupled, that we might never see each other again. It just so happened that we coupled up again. And I didn't learn that until a long time later in England. That was the way she got us out of Czechoslovakia. We went to, I guess Holland it was, and got across the channel, and my father met us at the port. And we hadn't seen him for a couple of months. Went to London. We were there for 2 years, from 1939 to 1941, while the Blitz was on, the London Blitz. England had not declared war on Germany when we traveled there, but a couple of weeks later they declared war. We lived in Wessex Gardens, which is Golders Green. It was bombed with incendiary bombs, burn up the houses. It was all nighttime bombing, and we would go into the underground every night when the alarm sounded. I was enrolled in Catholic school, La Sagesse Convent, and Tommy was sent to a private school. We would talk Czech to each other, and the only way that we would learn English quickly is if we just spoke English. Well, I didn't speak any English, but I learned quickly because I didn't have Tommy to talk to. I would walk to school by myself, and the first time I brought a report card back, it said, "Stephen is late every day." He said, why don't you go on time? I said, well, I go different ways because the streets are blocked. with what happened at night. Some houses were still smoking and streets were shut. And so that's why I'm late. I would get the shrapnel, and we would all compare the shrapnel that we got, and I took my time because I didn't have anything else to do, so I got the most shrapnel. But the shrapnel was all over the place.